Good evening. Welcome to today's tutorial. I think this is the third tutorial in our series, Crash Course on Database. Today we'll be talking about SQL, also pronounced as SQL. So what is SQL? So SQL is actually known as an acronym or an abbreviation for the word Structured Querying Language or Structured Querying Language. It is the language used to interact with database server. Now, there are many database servers out there. We have SQL Server, we have Oracle, we have MariaDB, we have Postgre, so on and so forth. I'm very sure you've heard of Oracle. It's one of the big ones back in the days. There's also Microsoft SQL Server and also MySQL. I didn't even put MySQL in this list. And SQL Server is known as a fourth generation language, and you will see why it's called the fourth generation language, because unlike languages like C#, JavaScript, and the rest, SQL Server is closer to English or natural language that you can get in terms of programming, one of the closest, right? So it looks like plain English. You're like telling the computer some kind of direct statement. So we call those kind of language, we call this category fourth generation. Languages like C#, JavaScript, they are third generation. Then assembly language is second generation. Now, one would be expecting that just the fact that I know SQL, I can use SQL for any of the databases that we have out there, whether it's SQL Server, Oracle, or MySQL. But this is just half the truth, because the SQL for MySQL is a little bit different, just a little bit, not that much, just a little bit different from that of MySQL. The reason why this is the case is because these are different companies, right? Even though they try to, I don't know whether they try, but there's a standard, and the standard is SQL. Like, there's a company that guarantees that standard, that it should be kept. But most of them tend to deviate from that standard, and that's why you see the differences in each and every one of them. Now, what exactly is SQL? Now, as a querying language, the language is broadly divided into 5, and we'll be taking each of these 5 in this course, or majorly the first 3 in this course, and we'll be studying them and understanding them, because that is the ethos of what SQL is all about. The first one is DDL, also known as Data Definition Language. This DDL is concerned with the structuring of your database. So it's concerned with when you want to structure a database, like put the foundation, you want to create something, you want to destroy something, you want to alter something, you want to comment. It does not manipulate the data. So a good example I would give is, say for instance, this Excel sheet we have here right now, right? If let's say this is a database, it's not a database, but it's kind of a database, like it's a data store, right? But it's not a database. It's not an RDBMS. Now, if I want to use it, I need to predefine the rows and the column, like give it a name, that this would be probably an ID. So everything under here would be IDs, something like that. Then probably first name. So solar. So you can have something like this. So this here is the schema, the structure. To define this in SQL Server, I would use DDL to define them, right? Now, what if I want to define these records here, I would use the second, or the third in this case, type of language, of SQL Server language, or known as data manipulation query. So I want to insert a record into the database. I want to insert this record, Tola's record. I want to insert Bola's record. I want to insert Sola's record. I would use a DDL query, in this case the insert query, to manipulate the data. If I want to change a value, for instance, I want to change the ID here from 2 to maybe 6, I would use the update query. Now, if I want to delete the record, I want to get rid of the whole of this record in line number 3, I will use the delete query, right? I'll use the delete query. So this is the difference. This is what the major difference between a DML, a data manipulation query, and a DDL, a data definition query or language. The DDL is concerned with structuring of the schema, while the DML is concerned with manipulation of the data itself that is in the DB. So queries that are under DDL include create, drop, alter, truncate, rename. We will see all of this query in action as we go forward. Subsequently, another very critical type of SQL is DQL, your select. So the DQL is concerned with retrieving data from the database. So anytime you want to retrieve data from the database, whatever information you want to retrieve, whether you want to do a BI, you want to retrieve data for a website, you want to retrieve data, you want to log into your application, you want to confirm if the data exists on the database, you use a DQL to confirm this. So DQL, also known as query, is used basically just for retrieval of data from the DB. We spend a lot of time on DQL, DML, and DDL. However, there are two other type of query that we need to look into. These are DCL and TCL. DCL stands for Data Controlled Language. The goal of this one, you might not use it at all because it's mostly for administration purposes. So I want to grant a specific user some kind of privilege. I want maybe user route or root. I want him to be able to only delete and update in my database. I will use grants to give him those rights. If I want to remove those rights from him, I use revoke to collect those rights. I hope you understand. Data control language are commands or query that are just used to give access to some specific users in the database. The next is TCL. TCL is quite important if you want to go into software development. It's very, very important. I'll just paint a very simple picture. Now, banks, take for instance the process of you probably sending money to someone, right? There are many steps that they need to take. But I'll just, in the case of database, I will just mention two major steps. Now, apart from the fact that they have to do a DML, they have to do a DQ, they have to perform a DQL to retrieve some information from your account. They need to know if you have that amount of money in your account. So they perform a select to know if you have that amount of money in your account. Then if you do, they will withdraw the money from your account. That is a DML. Now, if they withdraw, more like an update in this case, they won't use a delete, they will use an update to say, okay, your total balance is 500. You want to transfer 100 naira. We're going to take 100 from 500, you're left with 400. So they take it out. Then they are going to look at the other person's account. How much does he have in his account? He has 1,000 and you gave him 100 naira. So we are going to update his account also to 100. Now, if you look at this, we've done 3 to 4 queries put together. Now, what happens if one of those queries break down in between when you are trying to perform them and maybe due to network failure or something happens, it breaks down? What that means is that the bank have deducted money from my account, but they've not credited person B's account. which is a problem in this kind of application. So this is where TCL comes in. TCL has this mechanism where you can wrap all these your DML and DQL queries in a TCL command known as transactions, so that anytime any of those transactions fail, let's say you're doing 9 or 5 queries, if any of them fail, you can call a rollback. A rollback will ensure that everything goes back to the state that it was before. You will be happy if you go to the bank and you try to transfer. Yes, you say it failed, but immediately it fails, you get your money back. You don't have to wait. You don't have to, oh, I did not, oh, you debited me, but I'm not seeing the money in my account, or you debited me and I'm not seeing the money in my friend's account. So I hope you understand the usefulness of this TCL, right? So that's the usefulness. We'll be covering TCL in details. We'll be covering DDL, DQL, and DML also in details. Thank you for listening.